I certainly am, Brother Eric. Om Shanti, and thank you everyone for being with us this evening. We have a lovely program for you this evening. Sister Kala has been here before. She is the director of Peace Village, which is a retreat center. It's the absolute largest, aside from Madhuban in India, I do believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brother Eric. But it is a fabulous retreat at Hunter Mountain, upstate New York. And Sister Kala has been a student and teacher of Raj Yoga for meditation for over 40 years and has been a wonderful shining example for me as I've come to know her so well in the past few years of how deeply dedicated she is to her spiritual development and to sharing that with everyone in every form, whether it's formal classes, helping Peace Village run smoothly, or talking one-on-one. She is a real jewel to so many of us. So our theme for August has been love born from true understanding, and that applies true understanding in a relationship with God. And I know that last week, even though I wasn't emceeing, Sister Anjani did a lovely job of explaining the holiday we've been celebrating, Rakhi. And as most of you may know, Rakhi is the tying of a bracelet that binds you to a very, very deep, loving, pure loving relationship with God. So of course, with all relationships, there comes responsibility, but what I'm focusing on today and yesterday and all week is not so much the responsibility and the goal of purity in myself, but the intimate relationship with this power that all my life I've called God. I've come to know as Baba affectionately. And the whole idea that we're going to address tonight in our topic, link of friendship, love with one, what is the difference? I mean, this is what I am going to ask Sister Kala if she isn't going in that direction. What is the difference between a human relationship that's loving and a relationship with God, which is pure? It's something we can trust. It's in the soul. And what I've learned as recently as this week, even more deeply, is that the relationship has to be an experience. So it's not just a question of knowing in my head what love is all about, having an image of God in my head, but actually loving from my soul, from my heart. And I had a wonderful experience this morning with this, and that's what I've been going a little bit more deeply with. So I've been really excited to share the evening with you, Sister Kala, and hear what you have to say about love with the one. I always forget, I just want to remind the audience that we do have a chat Q&A. You're welcome to ask any questions or make any comments that are appropriate for Sister Kala this evening, and we will address those at the end of the hour. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to turn the session over to you, Sister Kala. Thank you for joining us this evening so much. Welcome.
Thank you, Louise, and thank you, Brother Eric, for the introduction to the evening, which happens to be indeed a very, very auspicious evening today. I know all Thursday evenings must be auspicious for those who join you regularly, right? But today, especially so, because we've chosen this particular topic for a very good reason, and that is, it is actually the day that is celebrated as something that commemorates this very sacred and intimate relationship that we all are entitled to have with God. I particularly like your umbrella theme for this month, and love based on understanding. And I think most people will agree, although maybe not in time, but after the fact, that if only I had known this, if only I had understood this about this person, or if only, right? And so I think we all have the experience of that in our normal human relationships. And I was really thinking of when we do and enter into a relationship or an encounter with someone, what are the things that are going on in our head, you know? First and foremost, we must have heard something, we must have read something about that person, we must have seen something about that person. And so there's all that, right? What would you call it? Hearsay, maybe, there's all that information there. And then based on that, we might also have some assumptions, right? Based on what we have seen in life, experiences of the self or of other people. And we may have assumed certain things about that person, and in this case, God. And then, of course, there is this big element in which it's wishful thinking, right? Wishful thinking. Just because it's your deeper wish, you project it outside and you kind of think of the person in that same way, right? Not seeing anything that's coming in between as an intermediate reality. And I think all these things apply to our relationship with God as well, right? And I'm sure, I'm sure that you would have uncovered some of those things during these sessions of what had we heard about him, what had we read about him, what did we, have as a picture in our mind, and now what, and it's very beautiful because, this is now opening up our own intellect, so to speak, our highest way of understanding things. Intellect also has different levels of understanding. It can understand something and not understand something else. But then when it comes to understanding the soul, even the soul, I think that is a very, very high quality of understanding, right? And based on that understanding, of course, we are now also developing that relationship with God. And then today's topic, in which we are talking about particularly that link of friendship. I love the way that the words have been chosen. Friendship with God and the love for that one God. It's a relationship, I think, that many of us don't even talk about. And even for those of us who talk about, we probably don't know how to feel or experience that relationship, especially with someone that we don't see, right? It's hard enough, to keep friendship with human beings. But here is someone that I'm supposed to understand purely through my intellect and based on an experience purely through the abilities of the soul. And based on that, I create or, develop that relationship of a friend. And yet it's a relationship that's so, so important in life. I think when we talk of God, when we remember God, when we do anything to do with God, some of the most serious feelings come across, right? Very austere, of course, but it's not one necessarily of lightness. It's not that we oftentimes think of God as a person with humor, for example. You know, that would God have humor? Would God be able to tickle me sometimes? Which is what friends do to each other, right? Just kind of tease each other or tickle each other, or, just stretch the imagination of someone and play with them and all of that. So we don't necessarily think of God in those ways, I think. But the nice and important aspect of our life and journey with God at this time is that we can do that. We can actually enter into that very light and fulfilling relationship with God as a friend. And so what do friends stand for? What do they do? What do they not do? Right? Friends are there today, tomorrow, especially what do we say about friends? When we need them, right? Especially when we need them, they make themselves available, they make themselves present. And when somebody does that, then you say, this one is my real friend. This one really showed up in good time. This one really knew what I was looking for and came into my rescue. Right? But even before that, a friend would always understand. A friend would always understand where I stand. Of course, a friend would also be able to be objective and say, this is something that wasn't right. But a friend would also be able to put his or her shoes in my shoes and understand the facts of life exactly as I understood it at the time. And so I feel that that kind of, I'm not sure how we would call this quality, but really identifying deeply with my position, my feelings, and being there still, just because I took one wrong step, for example, and went in the wrong direction, or I took the wrong turn, that friend is not going to say, I'm never going to come with you again. Right? This is what friends do, right? It doesn't matter, you missed your way one time, and it's okay. I'll go with you again. Uh, uh, I know exactly. I care more for your company, your companionship, than anything else. And I can understand that you took a wrong turn. And they'll give me that benefit of doubt for the next time, and the next time, and the next time. So extremely, making me feel light. And so far, we have never thought about God in that way, right? Usually, when we think of God, and especially to do with our actions and going to God to either confess or to kind of repent for something that I have done or whatever, we never really think of what God's position would be, right? We're so caught up in our own feelings of guilt that we don't necessarily stop to even think. But really, what would God do if I went to him with something that I did not do right, for example? Because when we do right, it's okay, everything goes good, friends are there for you, whatever. But it's when things go bad, especially when things go bad with me, not so much the external, but when something is really, when I have gone against some values, for example, or something that I have not stood up to. And so what would that feel like for God? And in return for that, what would he respond as? What would be the response as that? And this is where, when I really began to understand, who he is, what he is, what is his part, what is his wish for all of us, and of course, particularly for me. And what would he go out of his way to do for me? It became very, very touching to know that he is constant. God's feelings for me, the feelings of love for me, is constant, never fluctuates. And why is that so? As you asked that question, Louise, in the beginning of the thing, because if we are human beings and we, our actions are speaking against our values or whatever, we react, right? We don't like it. And when we don't like it, we either turn our face away, or we raise our voice, or we do something that doesn't speak for a harmony in that relationship. But what does he do? He's a friend, right? First and foremost, he's there for you in that very, very neutral place. And that means that his feelings have not changed for you. Not that he hasn't noticed, not that he doesn't know what went wrong, or where I slipped or whatever, but his feelings for me haven't changed. And because of that, he acts as if he's a pure mirror, is a clean mirror, reflecting back to me exactly not only what I did wrong, but my reference point of what I can do, what I can be, as against that. So, so this is a fascinating way of making someone realize, first of all, making someone very lighten the burden that one is already carrying. Like, the worst thing that can happen when you've dropped a glass of water or broken a glass is somebody coming and telling you, how could you do that? You shouldn't have done this, you should have done that, right? That's not what you want to hear. What do you want to hear? Or what do you want to see? You want somebody to come in and say, let me help you to clean up this mess. Isn't that what you want? So that's what good friends could do. And so with God in my life and in my story, also the same thing. I've made mistakes. But at the moment, I did not know the impact of that, or I did not even know they were mistakes, for that matter. Right? Of course, he should have told me right away that, I shouldn't have done that, but I wasn't ready to listen then. But he finds the good time to come into my life when I'm ready to listen. And this is the other thing that friends do. They time themselves. When they have to say something to their friend, they don't just say, when you're not ready to hear it, they don't just blurt it out and say. But a good friend will know exactly at what time to say what, right? So God too, I think, comes in at that right moment when I am willing to open up and listen and realize for myself what I could have done better, right? And in the meantime, he waited for me. He waited, patiently. Friends have a lot of patience with each other. They don't get impatient. They don't rush things. They don't want to rush things. And so he's such a good friend that he waits patiently for that moment to come into the life and explain to me. This is the other thing about friends, They just don't come and say, you should have, or you should this way, that way. But they'll go back, just like a teacher, right? You know, a friend will play all kinds of parts, right? If they have to be a teacher at one time, if they have to be a guide at one time, or if they have to be even a parent at one time, friends will play all of those parts. So I think he comes into to kind of loosen up the mess, you know, when the string is all tangled up and I don't know which one to pull and, you know, which next move to make and everything. He comes and helps me to untangle that mess by explaining to me where I started my journey. Where's the beginning of that thread, in other words? He helps me to find the beginning of that thread very patiently. And he unravels, you know, all the messiness and the chaos in such a beautiful way by revealing to me the spiritual secrets of the game that I am playing in this life. And he tells me that beginning, the end of that thread, I'm very clean. I'm very pure. I'm peaceful. And my love is very pure too. I do not have a lot of needs, right? And then little by little, as that thread kind of interacts with other threads and gets caught up into those other threads, then I lose sight of that original beginning. I lose sight of my original qualities, my fullness, in other words. Little by little, I start wanting more, needing more. And that's when things go wrong and I lose my sense of peace and happiness. And so for me, for somebody to sit down patiently and talk to me about this, I call them a friend, right? I call them a friend because they know exactly what went wrong and why it went wrong, and they want me to understand it just as much as they understand it. They want me to see the truth, but they're not rushing it, they're not pushing it. And this is exactly how, for me, God has been in terms of being there, you know, reflecting back to me who I am, you know, and patiently waiting for me to understand. And in that process, making me feel totally light, you know, letting go, right? And purely emphasizing my strengths, looking at my strengths. This is the other thing that friends would do. They would talk so great about their friend. It doesn't matter how many weaknesses that one would have or how many downfalls they have, but they're not looking at that. They're looking at their strengths and they're talking about it, you know, to others. And so too, I think, in my life too, when I came and I recognized what God is really all about, all pure and positive. And what that means for me is that somebody is looking so deep into the soul and seeing the strengths, seeing the good, seeing the beauty. And when somebody sees something that is so deep and something that's so real, everything that's not real falls away, right? And so this is the experience. Now you will say, well, how does it all happen, this thing? You know, do you talk to him? Do you write to him? Do you, you know, what do you do to have this kind of an experience, so to speak, with God? And yes, of course, we start by talking, just plain old conversation. which we call as heart-to-heart conversation, right? Before, our habit was to look up at God and to, of course, ask, you are the great one, and I'm the one who has made this mistake, and you have to forgive me, right? But now we start talking openly about what's happening inside of me, what's happening in my heart. And not only that, but where do I want to go from here? Obviously, I don't want to go down, 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 but I want to go up, right? If I'm already feeling down, I don't want to go down anymore. I don't want to be more guilty anymore, right? I want to get rid of my guilt, and I want to feel, very free and dignified. And so I know that that's the direction that I want to take. And so what do I talk to God about? Not only what I did wrong, but really about this faith and belief that I must develop in myself. And this is why I think as much as God tells me who God is, who He is, He also tells me who I am to begin with. Remember, I said the beginning of that thread, showing me clearly my strengths, my virtues, my beauty. So as much as I can hold on to that truth, then He's also going to help me to experience it. But I need to be open in that communication. I need to, through my own way of thinking about myself, I need to uplift my stage. And in simple words, what we say is, we go to God as a pure soul. Right? We go to God as a pure soul. Even knowing that we may not have been in that pure state all the time, but it's okay, we put it aside. That's not the reality. The real self is pure. So I need to acknowledge myself and openly have my conversation with Him that this is the way that I want to maintain my state, my inner state of mind, my awareness. And it feels so good because it feels like I'm really your child now, right? You're really feeling that closeness with God. Or I can really feel that we are friends now, that there isn't that distance between us, that you are so great and I'm not. And then how come we are friends? There's a lot of alikeness amongst friends, isn't it? They have same interests, they do the same thing, they go out and have their own same hobbies. So how come we are so different? I want to be like you. I want to be like you in the way I look. I want to be like you in my attributes, in my qualities. I want to be like you in the way that you do things, what you do. What does God do? He doesn't look at the downside, He looks at the upside, doesn't complain, but He brings a solution to everything. Right? And He uplifts people. When someone is crying, He doesn't start crying with them, but He starts making them laugh. Right? So I want to be like that too. So exactly identifying with God's virtues, so to speak, God's tasks, so to speak, and really, not. So as I was saying, how do we start? It's by starting with this heart-to-heart conversation. When do you do it? Of course, it's nice to fix a time, but when do you have heart-to-heart conversation with your friend? Anytime, right? Anytime. Yes, of course, in our case, in terms of fixing that time, dedicated time for, remembering or for praying or whatever, yes, we can fix that time. But that's not the only time. That's not the only time. To know that my friend is always there, not to forget and to become distant. And then after a while, after I have gone astray, a few blocks, then I remember, where's my friend that shows me the path? Where's my GPS? Right? Not to remember after. So constantly keeping that friend with me so that, my reference is always there, that I haven't lost focus. It's like a compass for me on my journey. So on the same level, as I said, as soon as I start to talk in this way, I feel there is a flow of energy between God and me, right? There's a very free flow of energy between God and me. Because for most people, when we think of meditation, for example, sometimes it comes across as not easy. Not, I still don't know what to do with meditation. But in this relationship of friend, you don't meditate on a friend, do you? You talk to a friend. You chit chat with a friend. You listen to a friend, right? And so I thought this heart to heart conversation or chit chat that we say, but we do this in silence. The only difference is that we're not speaking it out, but still there are words in my head, right? I still put my ideas together. I still put my feelings into words and all of that. And so a good way to do that is also writing, right? Writing letters, so to speak, or what sometimes you would call it as journaling, right? That you are just writing this to your best friend. Whatever you feel about yourself at this time, wherever you are, whatever is bothering you, you write about it. But then after that, you come to a point where you know that this is not the real you. This is not the real you. And so you go back to that original, pure, real self, and you start writing about that. Mhm. I know I'm pure. I know I'm peaceful. I know I'm loving. Whatever comes to mind, but positive, positive. And then what do you do? And then when you have said everything you wanted to say, you become quiet. You become silent. And then what happens? You feel that something is coming back to you. Someone is speaking to you, right? And it's not a voice, perhaps, but your feelings are changing. There's a very beautiful story. Somebody is here in Peace Village right now, actually came with a lot of sorrow, a lot of grief, just 2 days ago. And just we talked, of course, about whatever was causing the sorrow. And she's just spent one day totally having this conversation, having this quiet time, silent time, meditation time, whatever you may call it, sometimes in the nature, sometimes inside in what we call Baba's room, in front of Baba's picture, from Baba's picture. And guess what? By the evening time, she was saying that I literally felt my grief and sorrow walking away from my heart, just leaving me and going away. And so magic is possible when you have God as a friend. And when you have that honest conversation and to and fro communication with Him. But there needs to be honesty, as I said, you know. And the honesty really is that I want to get closer to my truth. I want to get closer to you. And I really want to get closer to everyone, humanity, to nature, to everyone. I don't want to feel disjointed. I don't want to feel disconnected. And we're all looking for that, isn't it? This feeling of union, feeling of oneness. And so even if it is just a wish at this time, but to hold on to that wish and to express that wish, but to the right person, to God, right? Not saying that give me this or give me that, but I've expressed my wish and I know it'll be taken care of. This is what happens with true friends too. You don't keep going back to them again and again and reminding them, I told you to get me this, I told you this, I told you. They've told them once, and you know it'll happen, right? True friends will always care for each other's wish. If not today, then tomorrow. If not tomorrow, someday it's coming back. So to deeply also trust him that he's heard me, that he's taking his time to respond to me. And in that moment, in that time in between, let me hold on to my own sense of positivity. Let me not let go of that faith, right? So, like I was saying, magic is possible. And God as a friend, and you know, I think in today's world, this is what is needed the most. Because there's so much heaviness of our own karmas, you know, wrongdoings, there's that, or the suffering of others, the karmic settlements that we have to make with each other or whatever. So you literally need someone who can lift that burden off. And this is what happened, as I was saying yesterday. This person was sharing, could feel the burden lift off. And the only thing that she had done was determined that she was going to spend this quality time with God. With herself, of course, first, but with God also. Right? So sometimes it does take that dedication, commitment, along with honesty, because in the routineness of everyday life, we just get caught. And again, the thread gets more entangled and more entangled. Instead of releasing the thread gets even more entangled. So we do really need to take time. It doesn't have to be a full day, a full couple of days. But if we get into a habit of going to that place time and again, then I think it'll become easier, right? Because it's like any other relationship. If you've stayed away for a length of time and you have to start a conversation, it takes much more time to become comfortable, isn't it? My time now. So it takes much more time to get comfortable with each other. But if you've kept in communication, if your friend knows what you're up to, and if I know what God is up to and whatever, then the communication is very easy. So not to allow distance and time to pass away, but to keep in close communion with him. I think that's also very important. So you can imagine that what does Rakhi bring for us? It brings back the joy of this lightness in relationship with God. This understanding in relationship with God. And when you're understood, half your problems are solved, right? More than half the problems are solved. And so,
May I just
sorry.
want to respond to what you've said so far, and I see the hour is moving along. As you're speaking, I feel as though I'm in the middle of a meditation with gentle, loving nature. I can feel it. I can feel it in my heart as you speak. It's not just a thought. It's in my chest. It's in my heart. It's not just an understanding. I'm allowing that feeling. And you said something a few minutes back that we go to God in purity, even though we may not feel that we're consistent in the purity. And when you said that, I was very touched by the knowledge that God only sees the best in us. You know, and as you said, I can write pages and pages of what I've done wrong. And, you know, we train for maybe decades to look for forgiveness or think of God as punishing or all of these other ideas about God. The idea that he is a loving father, or I'm the child and he's the friend, and that it should be a conversation. But I need to believe him when he tells me that originally I come from purity, which is a far cry from some other, you know, beliefs that we may have grown up with. So that God is so pure that he can't blurt, you know, he can't do that. It's unfathomable. Like, I'm asking that the audience just think for a moment that God can do nothing wrong. And you've done such a beautiful job of bringing him to us as, and the difference between a human loving relationship, that he doesn't want anything from us. He really doesn't. He doesn't have to have his needs met by us. It's just so beautiful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have a need, and our relationships are very much based on that. No matter which one, you know, all relationships, you know, we kind of relate with each other coming from that place of need. And what he's teaching us now is to fill ourselves, you know, by getting it from him, whatever we are looking for. And then we too can be like him, giving it to each other and not wanting, you know.
Right.
So it's a very, very beautiful way of changing humanity one soul at a time.
Yes.
One soul at a time. And we do believe that this is that time of major, major change, major transformation.
Yes.
Even though it's not apparent, but if you can feel it within yourself, you can really begin to fathom that this can happen with everyone, and it can happen to the whole world.
Yeah.
That really we can move into a place of peace and happiness and harmony, really.
Beautiful. We do have a few comments in the chat. Would you like to address them now?
Okay.
We have Amit saying, suppose that we have encountered only his punishing nature, then how do we change our outlook?
Well, what we used to think of as God punishing us is really about our own conscience, really. You know, our own conscience doesn't allow us to stay away from our values forever. It brings us back somehow or the other, you know, sometimes through punishment, sometimes through realization. But really, you know, so we've given it the name God, but it's really our own conscience that brings back, you know, those feelings of punishment. And of course, it could be definitely if you hurt somebody, somebody would hurt you back. You know, it's common sense, right? So God doesn't even have to intervene there. It's just a natural phenomenon that happens. But what God does do is he actually comes to release us from punishment, reduce our punishment by taking us back to our origin, where we started, where we didn't do things that we needed to be punished for example. So he makes us alert, he makes us aware, again, by not pounding down on us, you should have, you shouldn't have kind of thing, but just laying it out on a plain card. If you do this, this is what happens. If you do this, this is what happens. And allowing us to see it clearly where I could have gone wrong so that I can now change my course of journey.
Yeah, beautiful. And lastly, we have a comment from Jane. Such a beautiful, gentle, loving, and gracious share of God as a friend. In grateful appreciation, Sister Kala.
Okay.
Thank you, Jane. Anyone else? Yeah. We do have time for if anyone else has a question or a comment. So
Shall we do a little meditation?
that would be lovely. I guess that would be so lovely. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. Om Shanti. Taking time from the busyness of the day and the mind just to sit quietly and retrieve my sense of who I am originally. Who I am always deep inside. I don't get these moments often, but when I do, they are so precious. Because I go to a place that makes me feel comfortable, restful, peaceful, settled. And from this place, I invite my friend, my greatest friend, the one who knows me so well, understands me inside out, the one who wishes the best for me. And most importantly, the one who sees the best in me. And we sit together quietly, chatting in silence. I remember my story, what went on when, my thoughts, my feelings at that time, and how I acted. And I revealed that to my friend. Knowing deep inside that that was a moment of not being real. And my friend, in turn, listens, sees, but doesn't see what went wrong. But like this constant laser beam, his vision is always on what is right, what is beautiful, what is pure in the soul. I allow myself to feel that vision of God on me. I allow myself to listen to his silence. And it feels like the soul is being washed and cleaned and cooled with the purity of God. And all I can feel is my lightness and my light. Double light. And in this moment of lightness and light, I feel my hands in God's hands. Walking with me. Protecting me. Guiding me. And even carrying me. And I say to myself that these are the moments that I want to come back to over and over again. This closeness and love. From God. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, Sister Kala. What a beautiful, beautiful hour. So as a planet, as a world, thinking just a little bit larger, which is what you invited us to do at the end there. We all have it in us, don't we?
Absolutely.
And we can aim high, one soul at a time.
Yep. And we're all friends of God at work. helping him, helping each other. Create that better place.
Yeah. And we can start at our own kitchen table. We can start in our homes. We can start with the kindness and love that we want from a loving relationship with our family, with our friends. And we can start right there to feel the difference. And come here every Thursday evening if you forget or if you want to be inspired. We love doing this on this end, and I love that you all love coming here as much as I do. And
so I do hope that everybody feels that bond, being held tightly and being tied by this love of God, which is what Rakhi, Rakshabandhan really stands for. That there's somebody looking out for me, and this thread of protection, nobody can break it. Nobody can break it.
And there are no strings attached. I had to throw in that pun. God does not come with conditions. Just demanding honesty, as you said. So thank you so much for beautiful, beautiful, soft, meditative, new way for some of us to look at God.
Thank you. Thank you, Louise, and thank you everyone for joining.
Next week, we have Sister Sandhya talking about how love is the soul's light. And then on August 25th, we have Sister Gayatri visiting us. And she has a special little talk on serving as a Shakti. And you'll all find out what that is then. So, Om Shanti, everyone. Thank you, Brother Eric.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Om Shanti, everyone. Thanks for coming to our insight tonight. Thank you, Sister Kala. We'll see you soon again, I'm sure. And Louise, always it's wonderful that you guide us through these evenings. So thank you all. Happy Raksha Bandhan, everybody. God is your friend. Enjoy. Good night.
Thank you. Good night, all.
Good night.
Shanti.